Welcome to Spain. We're staying in this beautiful apartment and we have a very interesting story about trying to track down the source of a sewer gas smell. Sewer gas smells a little bit like rotten eggs. It's this hydrogen sulfide that you may be familiar with if you've ever walked outside past a sewer grate. That's the smell. So we're very familiar with it because we walk past sewer grates in this city and then we come into the apartment. It's like, oh, that's exactly the same thing I just smelled outside. So let's track this down. First of all, there's construction going on elsewhere in this building. So you'll hear some hammering and stuff and you'll see some of that later. But I wanted to first explain the layout of this place. We have a very long apartment. So it goes from here and then it's got this long hallway with the bedrooms off of it that goes down here. That's very useful for cross breeze. So if we wanted to have one window opened over there, and I'll show you these windows, they're pretty amazing, and then one window open at the other end of the apartment, then theoretically we have a nice way for cross breeze to happen and the entire apartment gets ventilated from just these 2 points. That's pretty useful. That does not automatically happen. You need to design that into a space. It hardly ever happens by accident. It may be accident here, we're not sure. The other thing is that we're on the 5th floor out of 9 total. Generally, the middle of the building is where you want to be. Now, what we're going to do as we start to explore the layout further here is use the 4-3-2-1 approach. And I'm linking a video on screen now of the 4 elements of influence, 3 recommendations, the 2 systems, and the 1 goal. We're also going to be using what we know about the 5 factors of ventilation, which are, and I'm linking the video on screen right now as well, circulation, capture and filtration, humidity control, dilution air, and pressure relief. So that's all I'm using. I have no tools with me to be able to do this. So we're just going to be using our smarts so that you could be one of the freaks who likes to figure out why we have the smell of sewer gas in this beautiful apartment. It's not astonishingly fierce. It only happens sometimes, and I'll explain when and when not. But it's something that most people would get bothered by and not do anything about. They just say, well, my house has problems. Like, it smells a little bit sometimes. But once you get to the point where you're like, you know what, I really do want to fix this, how do you go about fixing it? That is what we're about to talk about. So the other things about this layout are that we have here a balcony that is like a cup shape. So it cuts into the building. The 2 sides of it extend out, and that is good for catching wind. And it actually does work. When the wind comes in this way, once the temperature starts building in the middle of the day, the wind will catch in here and be pretty fiercely going this direction toward the other really important feature of this apartment, which is the kitchen that is in its own space. This is the door to the kitchen. Now, if we are cooking in there and we're, God forbid, burning anything, this kitchen is what we sacrifice. This is the sacrificial room, what we've turned into a fume hood. Now we're using geometry to contain the contaminants, and we're using suction because we've got this positive pressure here coming through the window. We have, hopefully, ventilation going through here. Let me show you this from my perspective. So here's our nice, big, beautiful exhaust to it. It looks very strong. It is not super strong, and we know that because we've been using it. If it was super strong, you have makeup air. For those of you who are like, I want to do makeup air the cheap way. This is the cheap way to do makeup air. You have 2 windows here. So we can open these up, and also to supplement the fact that this doesn't suck very hard, especially if you're going to burn something and you use it all the time. You just direct the fan out this window, and then this whole room becomes depressurized. That door becomes the makeup air pathway. And as you step through this door over here, you can feel the breeze come at you, even right now, without us really doing anything. There is a slight breeze coming through this. So that's kind of again, probably not going to happen accidentally. You want to study the natural wind patterns in the place where you're building, things like that. Enough about the layout. Let's now get into the HVAC system. Obviously, heating and cooling that needs to happen. The heat is provided by radiators, which we have on a lot of the exterior walls. We're not worrying about that because it is summertime right now, so we won't be using any of those in this video. And anyway, they don't matter because heat doesn't move air except for just natural convection, which is very slight. We have dilution air provided by the windows, and let me show you how these windows work. So this is the tilt-turn style. You can tilt, you can also open them. There's a couple of reasons why you won't see these a lot in the United States of America. One is that they always open in. So you have to make sure that you have lots of clearance. Like this is not gonna work. So the fact that we've got a sink right here is already defeating the opening of this window. Also, I don't believe there's any way to do a bug screen in these unless the screen is on the outside. And that means that it's vulnerable to all the elements, to hail, to freeze thaw, getting caked with dirt and dust and stuff like that. It's a little not as easy to clean. So just FYI, there are mosquitoes here. I've got bug bites all over my arms to prove it at night. Because when you use natural ventilation like this to bring in the fresh air from outside, even though we're in a city and it's city air, but it is important to have dilution air because the indoors is more polluted than outside at certain times. This is an important feature, but we can't control for all of the things. We're not filtering any of the air coming in, we're not conditioning it, and we're not screening it for bugs and critters or parakeet feathers, which float through sometimes. We also have air conditioning, which is super important in this climate because we're here in July. We're told that in August, it's even hotter. You have to retrofit the buildings to do this. And in fact, every unit in this apartment building has its own, you do whatever you want, but the architects aren't going to build in certain things for you. So if you want air conditioning, great, build it in. Often the compressors for the AC units will go outside on the balconies, which means that these balconies are now going to be slightly hotter than normal because those things blow out hot air. That's how they take the hotness from the inside and put it outside. We also have a couple different kinds of vents. We have this vent here, and we have this vent over here. And you would think, if you're using an American style of HVAC setup, that the returns are going to be central. They're going to be closer to the middle of the house, and the supplies will be out by the windows. But that's actually not what's going on here. The cool air is coming out of these, which means that those are the returns. And that is a little confusing because what you can see above me here is a drop ceiling. This is how we're running ductwork in this place. It's drop ceiling. You run the ductwork inside this drop ceiling. You won't notice it. Like often if you have this hall feature, this is one of the beautiful things about building a hallway and then all the bedrooms off that hallway. You can drop the ducts into this drop ceiling and then feed each one of the bedrooms from here. You don't have to drop the ceiling in the bedrooms. And if you're one of those people who say, oh, I hate seeing things in the ceiling, like grow up. This is a good thing. But what that means then is that we're supplying centrally and then we're returning from out here. How in the world are they getting the ducts for the returns, which there's 1, 2, 3 in this room alone? How are they returning all those ducts back to the system? Well, let me show you. We are actually running what's called a ceiling plenum system. So what you are seeing up there is actually the ceiling. That's the plaster master ceiling. And this right here is a drop ceiling. So we're using the entire ceiling cavity as a duct. The curtains here are hung from the actual true ceiling. So this is even a drop ceiling. So we've got 2 layers of drop ceiling here. The fact that the ceiling cavity is now our return duct means a couple things. Number one, we like to make fun of that on this channel. It's called panning. It's actually illegal in many states in the United States of America. You can't use building cavities as ducts. That being said, and some of you are like, but you can't, it's not, if it's clean up there, which if you've been paying attention to the chemistry of indoor environments videos, you know that like dust is a major, it adds a lot more surface area to your house. It contains then a lot of chemicals and particles that come in from outside that might be toxic, and then they birth new chemicals that might also be toxic or even more toxic than before. Right, and it's food for mold. Dust is. It's the first food. So we don't like a lot of dust. We don't like spaces that we can't clean, and if there are spaces we can't clean, we don't want to be bringing air in through those to feed our family. But if you have to do that, then there's another way to fix that, which is filtration. So let's now look at the actual units. Here is one of them. And you can see that we've got nice big access panels here. We've got these acoustical tiles that I can shift to the side. Here's my unit. Here is my supply duct. This is duct board, basically. So all of our supply ducts are insulated. And then our return is right up here. So the filters are here. And I can actually, I'm touching the filter right now. Now the filters in here, which I'll show you in a minute, are not super hardcore filters. So you're not going to be filtering out a lot of the dust that's coming from these ceiling spaces with those filters, which means that we're not mitigating the risk that came from using the ceiling as our plenum. The other thing that happens is that we are depressurizing the whole ceiling cavity. And that means that this sewer gas smell that we're concerned about could be coming from literally anywhere, because it's all going to be drawn back to the unit. Like I said, this smell mostly happens when the AC is running. So it's definitely related to the AC depressurizing on that ceiling plenum. And it could actually be that there are stacks, plumbing vents that carry sewer gas inside walls that somehow have a hole in them. Like if you're hanging a picture and you drive a nail and it accidentally goes through the PVC or the cast iron or whatever it was that was already ready to crumble in the wall, then you've got an opening to your sewer gases and it can go into the wall. Since the ceiling is tangent to the wall, now it can get up and get drawn and distributed throughout the home. So that makes it difficult. The other thing about this analysis is that I do happen to have an infrared camera that I carry on my keychain all the time, but it's not going to help us, because sewer gases are not necessarily a different temperature than the interior of the space. So looking at the walls, you won't see a temperature differential. If you were to see a plumbing vent stack, it's not gonna show up with just a heat signature. Now, as you can hear from the hammering, we do have construction going on downstairs, demolition, and I went down and checked out the unit directly below us to see where the vent stack happened to be. Oh my God. Oh, mucho trabajo. Wow, muchas gracias, amigo. And this is what a new system looks like. They're putting all the services into these trays up top, and then they're fastening the conduit and probably the plumbing also to the ceiling before they finish everything out with plaster. All of this is plaster over this brick wall. Aluminum studs offset from the wall. The heating and cooling way up there. They say it takes them 2 weeks to build this out.
Look at what these guys have to deal with. That's good. Like that.
This is not the way to set up an access hatch for your HVAC system, which is embedded in the ceiling. So as I pull this to the side, I can actually see the return with the filter here. This unit is so long that it has 2 filters. This one I have just cleaned. This one is uncleaned, and it's because it's so far away from me that I'm nervous to even reach up there. You can see through the filter, and this filter is like a MERV 3, MERV 6 tops, but highly doubtful. Also, when I found it, it was not seated correctly. So I have since fixed that, and now it's squared off all the way down. And you can see that the ceiling is depressurized by this smoke getting pulled up into it. Now, what this means, that this is the only access hatch we've got, is number one, your filters are probably not going to get cleaned or replaced because it's so hard. I can stick my head and one arm up in here, but I'm not positive that I'm going to be able to reseat that filter correctly all the way down there. So if I'm a professional, I'm going to be very nervous, and I might just use a vacuum and just like do a light job with it. Number two, because the filter here is only a MERV 3, it's not filtering out a lot of dust. a lot of dust is getting through it. And what that means is that then inside of this unit, which is like this long, here it's meeting up with this cold, wet coil, which is going to collect that dust, it's going to trap it, and then it's going to stay wet and muddy for molds to grow on. So there needs to be another access hatch, a big one like we had in the other room, here to be able to get in and clean this coil, because this unit is especially the kind of unit that you are going to want to clean that coil because of the filtration and the return to plenum setup here, this sealing plenum. Also, the condensate drain. Because we've got this wet coil, condensate is being created by that. We're supposedly draining that water out somewhere. So this sewer gas smell that we're worried about could be coming from a condensate drain that doesn't have a P-trap built into it. That might have occurred to some people. It's not a concern because that P-trap is on the supply side. It's on the positive pressure side of the fan. And so when the system kicks on, it would actually, if there were no trap that was stopping the movement of air through that condensate drain, it would actually push air out of the unit, not bring air in. So we don't have to worry about that. You want to make sure that all of the traps inside the apartment and in each drain, there should be a trap, are wet. So we're just going to go ahead and kick on each of these for a few seconds, because if this apartment hasn't been lived in a little while or nobody has used this bathtub for a month, then that trap couldn't have dried out essentially, and then there would be an open connection to the sewer. In Europe, these traps are actually pretty interesting. Look, in America, we've got this thing that comes down and then it literally forms a P and goes into the wall. In Europe, we've got this, which looks like a self-contained little device that is the P-trap. So this should be underneath the bathtub, underneath the shower, underneath all of them. That being said, if you wanted to check, you just step over and take a big whiff of the drain and see if you can smell sewer gas. And no, I'm not smelling the sewer gas coming from that hole. So this is a diagnostic tool. Use it. This is how you track down stuff like this. The last thing we can do is try and test which one of the HVAC systems is causing the problem, because if it's only one of them, then cool. At least we've kind of narrowed it down there as well. So here's our thermostat. We can just easily turn off the AC. And we did this for a day. And it did make the smell go away temporarily. But within a couple of hours, the sewer gas smell had then migrated over into the other further system. We normally smell it right here as you come into the entry of the apartment. And so we were suspecting that it was this unit, but then it migrated over, which tells us that, like you can see up in the ceiling, all of the ceiling cavity is one big room. And so it just kind of migrates over. So yes, it seems like it is localized to this area, but beyond that, we can't really tell much. Also, you can't do this. If we only run half of the air conditioning in this apartment, then we get major condensation issues, because now we've made the temperature and the humidity level in the apartment two different things. And that is going to result in major wetness dripping off of the vents in the ceiling. That means you get it on your face and on the floor, but on the walls, it means you're going to get these streaks, and it's disgusting. You can't do that. So for those of you who are thinking like, oh, I want to build a house where I've got a second floor for my kids who are only going to visit twice a year, therefore I'm not going to run the AC up there in the summer, I'm sorry, but you can't do that. If you follow the directions of this channel and you build an airtight, well-insulated home, you don't have to worry so much, but just consider it your conditioning tax. You have to, if you're going to condition, you got to condition everything, because otherwise you're going to have major moisture problems that then lead to biological growth, and you don't want that. So we'll keep this back on. Now, the one last thing that I would say is, in the settings here, this is set up to run fan continuously. And since the sewer gas smell is associated with the fan running, this might be a perfect situation for us, since we're not getting any benefit from the filters installed on that thing, to just run in auto mode. So only run the fan when we need cooling. But actually, that's been disabled on this unit. You can't do that. So it has to be specifically configured. It says not available. So unfortunately, we can't do that. So we have to have it run nonstop, which means we're going to have that smell. Now, solution-wise, what can we do? Knowing what we know to try and mitigate this problem, there are a couple things. One is, instead of letting the ceiling be a depressurized space, we could do one of two things. We could actually pressurize the ceiling with a fan. If we got like a small fan that could run however much CFM that unit needs, which is probably, it's a 1 ton, 1.5 ton, so probably no more than 600 CFM. If we boosted 600 CFM up into the ceiling plenum, then it would pressurize the ceiling. And then the unit would still work the same way. It would be fine. We wouldn't be hurting the performance of the AC at all. It would make the problem someone else's problem in this building. Someone else would inherit the sewer gas smell that we are getting, and they would also have the sewer gas smell that they already had. So that's not really like a fix, that's a Band-Aid. The other thing that we could do is to just open up this access hatch, which would relieve a lot of the pressure of this unit, because the pressure, the negative pressure, is highest right next to the fans, which are right here. So if I take this off, now I've reduced the amount of depressurization in the entire ceiling plenum. That means partly that I'm not going to get any air pulled from the bedrooms at the far end here, or even from the living. Probably all the air is going to come right through this hole. But I'm standing in a bathroom. You do not want your return for your air conditioning coming from a bathroom for odor reasons or for humidity reasons. And that leads me to my other big whoops for the design of this apartment, which obviously didn't get really well thought through before they pulled the trigger on installing HVAC. This unit that we were so impressed with the access panels is also in a bathroom. And so because these are perforated, the air is actually coming through here. This is a giant return. If you do something in this bathroom, the smell of it will be distributed, circulation, through the entire apartment. We do have a bath fan up here, but you can see how small that is. Let me show you, there's one in the next bathroom that's a little bit bigger. So here we can see a slightly bigger fan. And what we want to do is find out if it can hold up one sheet of toilet paper, which it can. Okay, so it works a little, but could it hold up 2 sheets of toilet paper? Nope. Okay, so is it really doing that much stuff? Like, we're not going to depend on these things to pull out a lot of the odors. So those will be also distributed throughout the house, unless we close the door and are very conscientious about, like, turning on the fan in the first place, and also leaving the door closed for a certain amount of time.
Some solid diagnostic tools.
Right. The last 2 things that are available to us as solutions for this issue are to either dilute with outdoor air as much as possible to get the concentration of the odor lessened, but you want to be really careful about that because of, again, what we mentioned about the humidity. When it's really humid outside, and you open up all your windows and you got your AC on, you're just asking for trouble from drips from your exposed metal at the grills at the very least, and potentially also inside the wall cavities, stuff like that. You just don't want to mess with that too much. So be judicious. The last thing you could do is use charcoal filters. These are activated carbon filters. In the CIE series that we've been doing, the 31-part series, that's a PhD level look at indoor chemistry, they have been talking a lot about these carbon filters, these activated carbon filters, but it needs to have a lot of mass of carbon in it. And so that would have to be running nonstop, 24 hours a day. You'd have to have a fan, you'd have to have the activated carbon filter, and you'd have to just keep it running all the time. And it would need to be where you want it to be. Like, frankly, that would probably be inside the ceiling cavity. You could not just simply install really nice heavy-duty activated carbon filters at the unit itself, because that unit cannot pull air through those. It would totally kill that unit to try and have to work that hard. So those are essentially the options that we've got at this point. Or you could just be one of the millions of people out there who would just be like, meh, I don't care, which is totally fine. We respect that. So be who you want to be. If you want to be able to find out what's going on, remember to use the 4-3-2-1 4 elements of home performance: heat, bleed, airflow and pressure, moisture, and contaminants, making the 3 recommendations: air sealing, insulation, and mechanical upgrades on the 2 systems: the enclosure, which is the skin of the home, and the circulatory system, which is the HVAC. And one goal is control. Also using the 5 factors of ventilation, which are circulation, everyone needs it, capture in bathrooms and kitchens, and filtration, also very important. It's a cheaper way to clean the air. Humidity control, super important in a climate like this. We don't have much of it. Dilution air, which you can have plenty of if you just open the windows, but again, how you do that as far as filtration and humidity control becomes an issue. And then pressure relief, which in this home, because it's probably leakier, although I will say that all of these buildings that we're seeing here in Spain are built with concrete, which is very easy to get pretty airtight. So that can be an issue. And remember, don't trust code on pressure relief as well. You need makeup air probably a lot sooner than a 400 CFM kitchen exhaust hood. Just my little PSA on that. So please do comment below if you have other experiences from apartments like this in other countries or in homes around the world. We hope to be traveling a lot more and showing kind of more of the variety of how things work in homes and what kind of problems can crop up and how to solve them. Please do like and subscribe. Tune in next time.